Welcome to ReloWomen Live. I am so excited that everybody is here tonight, and we welcome all of our guests that are coming in. So come on in, come on in. This first section here is going to be interactive. So if you have any questions, I encourage you to post them in the comments and participate. Tonight I have with me, we're going to start off with our special guest, Juanita Brown Ingram. She is the founder of Purpose Productions, there we go, and co-star with her family of the Expats International Ingrams, which is streaming right now free to you if you have Prime Video. It is my latest binge, and it took me 3 days, but I did binge the entire thing. And I will tell you that this is the most accurate depiction that I have seen of a relocation journey. And so tonight we're going to hear all about her relocation journey. We're going to talk a little bit about her first one, which was in London, and then this one, which took her from Indianapolis to Taiwan. So we're going to do that. The one who has sponsored, not even co-sponsored, just sponsored this event tonight is Lindy Chapman, who is the CEO of DOS Social, and she is bringing a new kind of real estate brokerage to serve the unique needs of relocating clients. And so the more you can learn about DOS Social, this is a game changer in the real estate industry. It's real estate agents, but it's not. This is a game changer. You got to figure this out. And if you are an agent in need of a brokerage and you're not practicing right now, you need to talk to Lindy. And then our third guest here is Lynn Greenberg. She is the founder of Pivt, which is a new relocation platform that helps relocating assignees and their families create successful relocation experiences for the whole family. This platform helps not only with kind of the middle part and the end part to connecting, but it can even help you understand if this relocation is right for you. And so it helps put you in contact with people who have gone before you, even in the city that you might be relocating to. So welcome, ladies. Thank you so much for joining us tonight here on ReloWomen Live.
Thanks, Annette.
Thank you so much for having me.
Y'all are welcome. It's going to be a fun conversation. I like happy people, and all of you qualify as that. So thank you. So I know I've done a little bit of introducing, but in all of your histories, did you know that you would do this? Was this going to be your ultimate purpose?
I'll go first.
Go ahead.
By this, if you mean living abroad and living as an expat, oddly enough, and I know I talk about it a little bit in the show, when my husband and I got married, I did have a feeling in my spirit, and I had no evidence to back it up. Honestly, we were a praying couple, and I honestly had it in my spirit that, yes, this was going to be something that we were going to experience at some point in time. When we got married, I was 27. I never left the U.S. before. I had been a relocating spouse. I learned that you can be a trailing spouse domestically and internationally. So I had moved from Chattanooga to Indianapolis, and that was my first trailing sort of experience for his job. But the move internationally, we did our honeymoon in Rome, in Florence, intentionally, so that we could get used to being out of the country, and started traveling on our honeymoon. And I had this feeling, and I think if we hadn't done that, I would not have had the courage and the confidence to say yes to an assignment that we could live abroad. So
yeah, it's kind of interesting how that evolves. And I like that. You were one of those kind of kids who had that spirit in you that knew that this was kind of where I was going. I, on the other hand, was not one of those kids. I really thought, those kids, especially in high school, I'm going to be a doctor. I'm going to be an astronaut. They knew where they were going. Me, not so much. And it really wasn't until the relocations that I found that sense of purpose became kind of an issue. So, Lynn, what has your experience been with purpose and relocating?
So as you know, I completely fell into the industry. I relocated about a month after graduating from college to work for Bloomberg to London, and didn't know anyone there, and faced the issue that I think all people do when moving to a new and unfamiliar place, which is, how do you go about making your new city feel like home? And more specifically, how do you get information on your city from people you trust? Where do you live? Which bank do you join? And how do you recreate your network from scratch? And so, it was something that I struggled with, and I thought there must be a better way. And, it's been such a great experience, and the relocation, it's like a family. So it's been, a really exciting journey to be a part of it.
Mm-hmm. You're right. When you run across somebody else who has relocated, it's almost like you have this innate understanding. Oh my gosh, you get me. I don't have to explain. When I complain about this, you're not going to second guess me and ask me, why is that a problem? And so it's building that community. But like you found, it's kind of hard to find those people. It's not like we advertise ourselves out there going, hey, listen, I'm looking for another expat friend. Do you want to be my expat friend? Type of a thing. And so it does. It's something that is so needed and to build that connection. What about you, Lindy? You have moved, 12 times? 11? You're going to have to unmute. That's okay.
I always make something, yeah. So, I lived in Vienna twice before I got married. I went over there first as a nanny, and then went and finished college up in Chicago, and then was able to go back. And I went on staff with Young Life and worked in the international school, at which point my not that yet then husband came and found me and proposed. And anyway, long story, we ended up back in Alabama, which is where Juanita's husband is from. And so it was just, it was quite the journey. And then at some point we had to decide on who was going to have the career. We had multiple children. His career was, he is also in the pharmaceutical industry, that side of the business world. And it was one, and it was, like I was saying earlier, it was such a privilege to be able to support him, and really an opportunity to recreate myself every time we moved. I do want to say hello. We have a lot of people on here today, and I just want to say hi. Janet Turner is on here, who is in the relocation industry. Diana from Australia is here. She's an actor, a comedian. She's one of my favorite people. Diana, thanks so much for being here. Y'all connect with her if you've not. Amy Jacobs, who loves relocation clients and does such a great job serving them in Dallas. Laura Gasian, who is, if you want to know anything about New York City or where to eat in New York City, connect with Laura. And she can also sell houses. Natalie is on here. Natalie Webster, thanks so much for being here. Anyway, thanks everybody for being on. It's nice that you're not watching the football game, the big national championship tonight, but I guess when you are expats and in that world, maybe football's not that important. Christy is here, and Brittany Williams. So thanks everybody so much for being here. But yeah, I think Juanita's story resonates so with me, because I just love how she is a force to be reckoned with on her own. And she's taken this experience, though, and found ways to create herself with these crazy moves that they've done.
Oh, well, thank you so much for saying that. I definitely, even though I had an inclination and certainly felt that we were going to have this particular type of experience, you think and then you experience it. And then there's nothing that really, I won't say there's nothing that can prepare you for it. I think shows like this, conversations like this can prepare you for it. I wish this had existed for me 9 years ago when I first started my journey. I had absolutely no idea what it really entailed. I knew I'm a woman of faith, so I knew that this was what God wanted us to do. I knew this was the path that He wanted us on. It was a great opportunity for my husband's job. It was a promotion every time. These were not lateral moves. So every time it was a promotion, and it was the right choice for the family. But, and I say this all the time, being a lawyer, we don't tote well. We don't travel well. We kind of get qualified in a particular jurisdiction. And I, went straight through undergrad, and being from Tennessee, and went straight through undergrad, did my JD MBA, sat for the bar exam. You don't do all of that because you don't want to be a lawyer. So it's one of those things where I didn't really think through it in terms of what it meant for me and my purpose and what it was going to mean when I stepped away from the practice of law, the traditional practice of law. I was dead set on, I'm very committed and still to family and what it meant for my family and what it meant for my husband and my children. And it has been the best decision we've ever made. I don't regret it at all. It was a journey to navigate what it meant for me as an individual.
And that's the biggest challenge, is because we as moms are so very interested in continuing the journeys of our children and our family and our spouse. And we're so focused in on that we lose track of who we are. And we think, oh, we'll just make it work. We'll just make it work. And, kind of by the seat of our pants. But we put, the difference in experience is stark, because look at all the effort and the planning that we put into these other people. And, when we just think we're going to do it by the seat of our pants, we get those kind of results. Yeah. And so it does take courage. Yes, Diana, thank you. Now, for those of you watching, be sure you heart us. I like when Ben Cross does this, when he does this Love and Relo. Heart us and give us some thumbs up. And
give us some love.
Encourage us on little happy claps and all of that.
Yes.
And so as we move forward, Lynn, you moved from London eventually back to New York City. How did that affect who you were and what your purpose was?
I think that's an important question. And I think you talked about before, expats just understanding each other. I think that's something that only having gone through it, that you would really understand. And that whole repatriation process is just, it's eye-opening. I think it's harder than the actual move. Because, especially for me, I was going back to where I started. It wasn't, another new place. And so I went back to home to find that, people had moved on in different ways and things weren't the same, and, time never stopped. And I was so different myself. The people and the experiences I was exposed to, and, the opportunity. I actually, one of the reasons why I really jumped into creating Pivt was because I craved that feeling of, learning something new and meeting new people every day, kind of that unknown that you have as an expat. And so, creating a startup kind of gave me that. But it's really, really tough creating purpose when you're repatriate, because you're a totally different person, and where you go back to is completely different.
Mm-hmm. It really is. Lindy, because you've moved so many places too, how did a different worldview after living and meeting so many different people change your purpose?
Wow, that's a great question. I think you learn what's important, and it is family. It's the things. I remember one time, and Juanita, you can probably relate to this, when a small group leader from our church, he had lost his job the third time. He said, you need to invest in the people that are going to cry at your funeral. And that was a real changing point for my husband and me. The other thing we got really involved in is the marriage ministry, right? Because this is tough on marriages. And so many of my friends, and I'd be curious to know if y'all have seen this, so many of our friends that came back from expat assignments are no longer married. And that's crushing to me. And so that's another thing that's, that was a purpose. I mean, and you need to have that team. You don't have anything else to depend on, right? You move to a new city. Kids don't have friends. You don't have friends. Mom's not there. You've changed your career again. And the husband or the wife is diving into their new role and responsibilities. And so I think it's so important to have a purpose that unites you, and a purpose that's your own, and that you can take with you. I love some of the expats that I've interviewed on Relo Talk, like Amel Deregi and Sunday Beam, and people that really help other expats recreate themselves with each move.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I can totally relate. to that.
Sure.
I think this show was actually our uniting purpose in going over to Taiwan. It definitely, served as quality family time, even though there were cameras present, but it was an excuse for us to go out and eat, an excuse for us to explore different places in Taiwan, an excuse for us to have certain dialogues. And not that we needed the excuse, but it just made it a lot more cohesive and fun. And yes, it's definitely, at some point in time, you do realize, especially with marriage, it's you literally against the world sometimes in this new world that you're going into. And it's just, you're in it together. And you're right, it's very trying on marriages. If you have any issues and communication problems, you got to work them out, because if you have to work it out, it takes a lot of effective communication, especially when you're navigating in a country where communication is already a problem and you don't speak Mandarin. So
yeah. Well, and I think that's what's so important. What I love about what Lynn has created with Pivt is, and I'm sure you've experienced this, Juanita. I know you have, Annette. You move to a new city, and that spouse, that partner has a new job, and it's all consuming. They're traveling, they're building a new team, they're learning a new job, a new role, and you're trying to make sure they're good. Everything at home is kind of good, so they can do their job, and that the kids are good. Yes. And sometimes we don't take care of ourselves. Yes. And we forget to, and we lose who we are. And if you don't have that purpose and that grounding or those connections to take care of that social and emotional side, it really can be devastating.
Absolutely. I think I experienced that. I didn't even know, and I was telling Annette this in a previous conversation, I didn't even know what trailing spouse syndrome was 9 years ago when we moved to London. I didn't know that's to give it a name or to even anticipate that could be an issue. I think sometimes when you have these type of platforms and we talk about these issues, to even be on the lookout, to know that this is something that could occur, that you may need to really think through, okay, like you said, your spouse, they hit the ground running. They move there with purpose. They have a purpose for being there. It's their job. And I remember the first time we were in London, and my husband was pulling out of the driveway. It was a gravel driveway. I could still hear the tires over the gravel in my head of him pulling out, and I was there with the 14-month-old on my hip that I was still breastfeeding, and a 3-year-old standing next to me with no Wi-Fi because we had just moved into the house. This is, back in 2011 before everything was so advanced. Now there was no FaceTime. I didn't have a cell phone at the time that worked in the UK. I didn't have television. There was no way to watch Peppa Pig. And I had these two small little babies, and I was just standing there waving, and I was waving goodbye. And in my heart, I was like, don't leave me. And it's true that, that settling in feeling, no matter how much you think you're ready, you really have to think about, okay, what is it going to look like? What is it going to mean? Because going from executive corporate attorney to stay-at-home mom was a journey in and of itself, and I don't regret it at all. It's beautiful. I love it. But it is a journey. It is a journey.
But it is one of those things where you have to redefine your whole purpose, because the previous purpose told you what you're supposed to do. And so now you're standing there with a baby on your hip and your ankle, and you're like, now what am I supposed to do? Yeah. And I think that's what people lose sight of is, purpose is something that for many people who stay in the same community year after year, it evolves over time. And so they may not even be conscious of it or have it defined in their own head. But once you relocate, once you uproot everything and you land it someplace else, and part of who we are because of what we did and who we knew and who we did it with is gone.
Yes.
It's like, now what?
Yeah.
Now what do we do? And that's what makes this conversation about purpose so impactful, because like you said, when you don't know that trailing spouse syndrome is a thing, you just suffer through it going, what's wrong with me?
What's wrong with me? Yes. I honestly sat in this particular chair in our living room for 4 months and just cried. And I didn't know what was wrong. I didn't know that honestly, I was mourning the trajectory of my career, the normality, the routine. So oftentimes, depending on where you're coming from and what you do, your profession also gives you a certain sense of worth, you know, and then it's like, well, who am I now? Well, what am I supposed to do now? Well, what makes me important now? What makes me valuable now? Especially if you're a type personality, achievement oriented person that I still am. It doesn't go away. It just transitions into, a different place. But it definitely was a challenge, and I didn't even know that that's why I was feeling so sad. And that's why, I went through what I went through. And the best thing that I did was I just decided one day to get up. I just decided I was like, I'm just going to stand up. I'm just going to stand for a minute. And I just decided to stand up and then to reach out, meet other people, talk to other people. And I invested in a life coach, which was almost like a pseudo therapist.
Yeah.
And I think that's when the pivot, I think I should point this way, the pivot happened. And knowing that you don't have to do this alone, and that you need to not do it alone, and you need to get, I think in Proverbs it says the plans fail for a lack of counsel, but with many advisors they succeed. Success in being an expat and a trailing spouse, supportive spouse, relocation family comes with the input of many people. So thank you for creating all of the outlets and businesses and platforms that you're doing. I wish if I had only known.
But it's why we created this, and it's why you've done your show as well. And I think that's what's so remarkable. I think expat women, especially expat women, are just some of the most creative people that I know, because we're problem solvers. And so I love that and how you've done that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
I'm just curious if, when you were planning for your moves, did you, reach out to people beforehand? Is this something that your husband's company provided you with? So any type of support or help, or very minimal?
They did. No, they were great support. They did provide us with, we went through cultural assimilation classes that taught us about the British culture. They did that both for here and Taiwan. And this time when we moved to Taiwan, they did a special person that came to talk to the kids because they were a little bit older for this particular move. We had great support. I think it's when all the support leaves. And you're there by yourself. We're a corporate relocation. So they do have great support systems. I think even more now with this move than with the first move. So it was. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, and I was corporate moves too, and we moved to Boston in January of last year, right before everything shut down. And Lynn and I did a survey following that to find out who had heard from anybody involved in their relocation. And they spent $120,000 on our relocation to Boston. We were in corporate housing for a while, so that was a big part of the expense, but then the commissions and everything else. But then after the world shuts down, nobody calls, nobody checks on you. And so it's like you said, I mean, that's a big part of it. And these companies, they don't spare any expense. I have no complaints against our company or the RMC. They spent so much money. It was like on Annette, you may have heard me on Ben Cross's show today say, we don't need to be spending more money on this. We're wasting money. There's so many great causes out there. If you want to waste money, we can spend some money on people that really need it. Take care of us. Make sure we get those connections that we need, that support we need. Right? So I love that. I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, because a lot of times, they take care of the logistics. They take care of, even the cultural training. But what some relocation companies like Mobile Relocation out of New Zealand and Heart Relocation out of London are doing is that they're also incorporating wellness into this. And he was on Ben Cross's show today, and he was talking, Robert from Heart Relocation, and he was talking about how important that this wellness component is part of this, because that is so much mental health. And it doesn't need to get to the point where it's a real problem, especially if we work to take care of it up front. And that has to do with connection. Like you were talking, Lindy, reaching out, just tell me that you care and you know that I'm still
just
aware.
call me and see how I'm doing. Janet asked a great question and asked if our spouses experience some of the same difficulties that we do. I'd be interested to hear what.
I don't think so. No, I didn't experience. I didn't see him experience it. No, I'm just gonna say no.
But that goes back. But that goes back to that key thing you said. What do we need more than anything?
Mm-hmm.
Purpose.
Yeah.
They have it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. And they have a place to belong, and they have
and routine.
A routine.
Yes.
And this is my job.
Yes. And they're busy. They're extremely busy. And most of the time, these are new positions that come with a lot of responsibility. Like people, Keenan was barely in the show. I mean, he was so busy. I had to literally pencil in and schedule to film with him and be intentional about, okay, these series of weekends are all that I have to include him even in this show. Like he was an extra, because he's busy. Then, we filmed through COVID. That was a hard time of leading an organization that to film through all of that. He did not have a lot of time. And so they're busy. They have a lot of focus and a lot of things to do. It's almost like they're too busy to think about any change.
They have too much going on. But again, that goes back, and that's a great question, Janet. Thanks for asking. And that goes back to why Annette does what she does. It goes back to why we need Pivt. It goes back to what I'm doing is training real estate agents and relocation professionals to understand their client is not the assignee. They're fine.
Fine.
They're good.
Yeah.
Make sure that the spouse, the partner gets connected, that they're supported. Empathy doesn't cost anything, truly, and just make sure they get connected and that they're supported and they feel heard. I think sometimes we just need to know we're heard.
And sometimes it's a little unique, like in the beginning, because they can give you a list of like, okay, here are the American clubs and here are these groups. And it doesn't make any sense to you at the time. And it can feel almost overwhelming for someone just to hand you a sheet and say, okay, I've given you this. Here's your way to connect. And what if you're an introvert?
Yeah.
Or what if, I remember when we moved to London and there was a American group and they didn't always have in the UK a creche or, a nursery service. And I had these 2 young children and I didn't want to just, I didn't have a nanny immediately when I landed because I didn't know anybody. So you think about, the realistic logistics of plugging in. Well, how do you do that with 2 small children? And maybe what I really need as former executive lawyer mom is a minute to have an adult conversation. And how do I navigate through that? And so but I think there is a assumption that you will love being with your kids 24/7, or that they will love being with you. Because I have had my children tell me to get a life on many occasions. And I mean it, and it's fine. I think you're right. I think the wellness component, certainly not to complain about any benefits or aspects of what it is that they do. I just think that it is a component. I'm so glad that you ladies are filling that space.
Yeah. Well, and you said it earlier, knowledge is power. And I think sometimes we just need to know that it's going to be okay. You may curl up in the fetal position today, but it's going to be okay tomorrow. And you can be with other strong women that can say, I had the sheets over my head for 3 weeks. Now look at me. And that's very powerful to see.
I think even knowing that before you move, making those connections beforehand, not only to say, okay, my child has a special need. How should I go about navigating this so it's not a concern when I arrive? Or, can we meet up when I get there and have a coffee on the first week when I feel, really disjointed and lonely? And I think one of the best, I think one of the only parts that's good about COVID is I think that companies are starting to recognize that, well-being has, a huge place in their ROI. And also that's what people need and that's what people want. And I think it's going beyond the employer. I think they're really taking note into, job embeddedness, which extends the benefit beyond the actual employee and gives it to the spouse, and really, focuses on the family as a whole. And I hope that's something that doesn't go away.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah. You are so right. Yeah, because COVID has brought us to that point where our emotional health is everywhere.
Yeah.
And I see it more in relocation and in the relocation discussions in the last year, whereas I really didn't see it before then. And so if
Yeah.
there is an upside to COVID, which luckily there are many, it is that. It is that. So
Yeah.
I'm going to sign off for Lynn and
Yeah.
Lindy here. Thank you
Thank
so much
you.
for joining me. And then we're going to continue the conversation.
Yeah, so hang on and stay there and keep
Yeah,
coming and
stay
keep
here.
your questions coming.
Yes.
And I'm going to go to the background and take Lynn with me. So Juanita, nice to meet you. Have fun.
Pleasure meeting you as well.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Thank you.
So as we reset here, we are with Juanita Brown Ingram. She is the founder and co-star with her kids and her husband of the Expats International Ingrams, which if you have Prime Video, you need to start binge watching this today. It only took me 3 days. Now there are 20 episodes, so I really committed to this. But
Thank you.
it is the best representation of the relocation and expat journey that I've really ever seen. And granted, there is not another video series that covers this. There are a number of exceptional podcasters that will speak to this, but this journey in Technicolor really kind of brings it all front and center. And so, I really appreciate you putting in the time and effort to creating this. And so one of the things that people might not know about you is how you and I got connected, which you knew. Now, I have a girlfriend, Natalie Webster, who is streaming with us tonight. And her sister competed against you for Mrs. World in San Juan.
Yes.
And to her chagrin, you won.
I did. I did. And I remember that.
Someplace.
Yes, I did. Yes. Well, there's the doll back there. So I got my own custom Barbie doll made.
That.
Yeah, I got, and it says Mrs. World International on it. So there's my doll. That's a different crown from a different pageant. My other crown is in the room. It stays in like a vault because I got real pearls on it and stuff. So I try not to let it be out too much. But yeah, I keep the doll on the shelf. But yes, I remember. It's funny, the connections that you make in life. I remember that vividly. And it's interestingly enough, when you talk about purpose. So I had always, I'd done Mrs. pageants in the past. So I didn't even know in the beginning that there was such a thing as the Mrs. level. So you know that there's a Miss, a teen, and there's a Mrs. or Ms. for married women and widows who want to continue to compete or, bring attention to a particular charity. Dress for Success has always been my charity of choice. So I've raised money for them. And then I went on to be a founder of the affiliate in London. And I was living in London at the time. But interestingly enough, what really got me up off the couch was the pageant, because they contacted me and asked me to compete. And there's no come to Jesus moment in terms of focusing on yourself and health and wellness and working out like a swimsuit competition, because you have to walk towards the judges and walk away. So it was a nice motivating moment. And it helped me to find a reason to put one foot in front of the other. At that time, I had always been a lawyer. It was so much, and I still am. I just thought of being a lawyer in such a boxed way. And I had always had that identity, and to not be able to practice, to not go into the office, to not have clients, to not work 60 hours a week. Some people would think that's great. I think I wasted, when I look back at it now, like I said, I wish I'd had you and other people, to really help navigate through that, because I think I wasted time not realizing what a great opportunity and position that I was actually in, and not understanding what all you can do with a law degree, who all I actually was, what was important to me, really taking the time out to say, okay, Juanita, who all are you beyond just being the attorney? Because I had to focus on that for so long, that really almost was all that I was, besides a mom and a wife. But in terms of purpose and identity, it was Juanita the lawyer, even though I had books inside of me that I wanted to write that I hadn't taken the time to do. I had children's books inside of me that I wanted to write, hadn't taken the time to publish. I wanted to be an actress, and I was too busy adulting, even though I knew I had a particular gift and talent. And, it looks different for everybody in terms of that way that they navigate through identity and self-worth and self-efficacy and purpose. And so, it was. And hi, Natalie, thank you so much for making the connection. And tell your sister I said hello. She was the sweetest person. The whole competition, pageantry gets a bad rap. It was one of the greatest competitions I had ever experienced. And I got so much inspiration from being around other great women, because everybody there was phenomenal. I just so happened to win, but everybody there was a winner, honestly.
Well, and that's the nice thing, is that when you find that group of women, no matter where you find them, they build each other up. And it's important, just like we were talking about finding our crew for our expat women. One of the things that in the later episodes of the Expats you were doing is that you were building your tribe. I loved this imagery that you had in building your tribe. And you built your tribe with so many different people from so many different places and interests and jobs and things like that. When you were doing that, and you were thinking about and I'll just generically say your purpose in this, what was driving you that led you to these people and connect with them?
Oh, it's a variety of things. So our paths crossed in different ways. There's a group, I call us the Taiwanese in Vogue, because it's like 4 Black women who are these trailing spouses, and I tease on the show and call us the Taiwanese in Vogue. And I met them actually through church and through having kids in the children's ministry here at church. And that's how we all connected. And then some other people, when everything happened with the pandemic, first of all, being in Taiwan is a little different than being in London, in that London is very diverse. You see a lot of different people. I think being in an Asian continent, there's a difference in that it can be very homogeneous, or at least feel that way for a period of time. And so when everything happened in the US with COVID, and then with the Black Lives Matter movement and sort of all of the social justice uprising, there was a Black Lives Matter solidarity rally in Taiwan, and then a series of events, because for us, Black Lives Matter, we had a solidarity rally here. We don't have police brutality that exists here. So there's a different conversation. Sometimes there are microaggressions that happen, but it's a different environment. So we were standing in solidarity for social justice. I met a lot of people at that particular event. And so I met the founder of what was then Black Lives Matter Taiwan. Is a different organization now. I met the founder of Taipei is Listening, which I think was a beautiful organization that put forth these events of dialogue, because Taipei is the capital city in Taiwan. So Taipei is Listening was all about having conversations around experiences, around race, around diversity, around marginalized people, the indigenous population here, very diverse conversations, civil, very needed. And so I met her. And that's Allie that you meet on the show. Zoe is the founder for Black Lives Matter Taiwan, or was back then. And then you meet all of these other characters. Jewel and I met at the rally, and I heard someone behind me, she's from Arkansas, and both of us being Southern girls or Southern women, I heard this person say, yes, I heard somebody say, "Hey, y'all." And I'm like, it's still my heart. Yes. I'm like, oh, it's a scene out of Still Magnolias. Where are you? So we immediately connected as 2 women from the South, and both of us being believers. And so, it was actually in just attending events and going out and meeting people and being intentional about being in certain spaces. And then one person introduces you to another and so forth and so on. And Zoe was like this connector. She knew everybody. It's like that one person that you meet that knows everybody. Zoe was that person. Shonda was another person who just kind of knew everyone. So it was just a matter of putting one foot in front of the other and going out. And I'm far more comfortable this move than I was when we moved to London, about going out and meeting people and just, being a little extroverted. I'm naturally an introvert. I'm a forced extrovert, if you can believe that or not from watching the show. When the cameras come on, they yell action, different person. But in my personal life, I could sit in this chair and not move and be just fine. But that doesn't help you to find tribe. So yeah, it was just a lot of networking, and it was a great time and a beautiful journey.
And you did such a wonderful job bringing to screen the real personalities of each of these women and their character, the things that you talked about, their mannerisms, how you interacted was so much of your storytelling that you did throughout this, that wove through and really demonstrated community in a new place.
Oh, thank you. Yes. When I moved to London, I decided to go back to my first passion. So my mother is a musician and she's in the performing arts. She had us involved in theater. I started my first stage play was when I was 9 at the Tivoli Theater in Chattanooga. And I always knew that I loved that aspect of it. I love people. I love watching people. I love conveying stories and telling stories. So as a filmmaker, and so eventually that navigated its way into not only being in front of the screen, but being behind the camera as well. And so being a storyteller, you want to make sure that you have something relatable to each person. And really, for me, in this particular genre of unscripted TV or reality TV, I wanted to create a new subcategory of sort of smart reality TV so that it is both entertaining and educational at the same time. It has to be entertaining, but you do want to show the fullness and the breadth of what these women brought to the table and who they are, because and I'm so appreciative of you saying that it's a great depiction of the realities of being an expat. So many people, some of the feedback, we don't really have a lot of negative feedback. I'll be honest, we don't. You can't please everybody, but some people were expecting a travel show. And to your point that you made earlier, you have wonderful travel influencers that are out there, wonderful blogs that are on YouTube. And, you've got International House Hunters with HGTV. You've got all of these sort of travel specific. And I think that's the misnomer, that people think that expats, that all we do is move somewhere and then go travel all the time. And that's not, we have to live. We have to do real life.
Once we have the house, then everything is fine.
Everything is fine and everything falls into place. And then we just travel, because surely once you unpack,
we don't have anything better to do.
We don't have anything better to do. And that's not realistic. That's not honest. And so, and also we filmed this during COVID. So some people were like, oh, I wanted more travel. I'm like, I wanted to breathe. So we weren't going to travel around the world during COVID. Sorry to disappoint you. You do get to see Taiwan and London and Singapore and a little bit of America. So we did film, in 4 different locations and countries. But once COVID happened, you will see a lot of Taiwan. And that's a reality, and I know that some people are so used to like storylines, so to speak, or, even though it's unscripted, it can feel a little scripted sometimes. This is not that show. It was very honest and real. And there were things, my production partner, Brittany Williams, is watching. She's on here with us. And she was here. Hey, Brittany. And she was here for like 4 months living with us, just to make sure that we captured everything, that when the movers came and half of our stuff that was arrived wasn't supposed to be there. And the other half that did arrive was all broken almost, and that's how it goes. That's the reality. It's not all oh, let's just go travel and let's just go hang out. And we're on a long-term holiday. I think that's the idea that some people have. And it is great. It is a wonderful experience. And it does give you an opportunity to travel and go to different places. My kids have been to 23 countries, and then most of that is due to the fact that we've been located so closely. When we were in the UK, we went all up and through Europe, and even in the first 4 months that we were here before COVID happened, we went to Philippines, Singapore, Japan. And there's one more that I'm missing that I'm forgetting right now, but we traveled, and that's part of it. That's not all that you do, though. You do have to go to school. You got to figure out how to go to the grocery store. You have to go to the doctor. Things happen,
Everyday life.
Everyday life.
I want to give a shout out to both Brittany and Tamika for participating. Hello, ladies. And then Christy Martin asked a question a little bit ago, and I know that she is very interested in potentially relocating someday. What personality traits help you relocate successfully? What have you seen in yourself or in other people, and what's innate and what can be learned? Kind of a big question.
Yeah, that's a big question. It's a good question, too. I think what I have developed that helped me in this journey was the ability, and I don't know if this is a real personality trait. I'm not really trained in that area. I have a friend who's a psychologist. I get free therapy from her all the time. But I think what really helped me was to have the ability to have perspective, have the ability to keep things in perspective so that I am always balanced and always centered, or at least trying to be. So perspective, what I mean by that is I had a professor one time that told me, if you hold a quarter up to the sun, it'll look like it's the same size. But in actuality, the quarter is not the size of the sun. It's your perspective. What I had to do, because there are so many hurdles, and sometimes if you lose perspective or your perspective is skewed a particular way, you'll miss the beauty of the moment and being in the moment of where you are and seeing the opportunities, not to invalidate your feelings, not that that is not really happening, not that it's not important, but my ability to overcome those real moments was developing that muscle of perspective and the personality trait to surrender when you don't have it all together and to not be apologetic or shy about asking for help. So whether that's getting a life coach, getting a consultant, going to therapy, you don't have to figure it all out. You don't have to hold it all together by yourself. And I think that there is strength in being able to just say, I'm not okay. I am not navigating this. Can someone please help me? This is what's happening. And just raising your hand and saying, help. Mm-hmm. And that takes humility. That takes strength to really say, I don't have it all together. That takes confidence to know that you're okay. Even when you're not okay.
How did that, I really like this in concept. And could you take this through to when your things did show up and half of them were supposed to be in the States and the other half were broken? How did this help you walk through that and stay real without fighting or resisting just what was going on and really delaying you from walking through it?
Yes, I think having a good sense of humor might be a good personality trait as well, because I just thought that it was utterly hilarious that this could go so wrong. It's like, so wrong. And honestly, keeping things in perspective in the sense that, okay, there are certain things that I can replace, certain things that I can't replace, but that's what insurance is for. There's some things that they broke. The only things that mattered to me were not the expensive things. It was like heirlooms, or my grandfather had given me a table. My grandfather passed in 2018. They broke it broke it. I can't get that back. That was the only thing. But then I just reflected on the fact that, but my grandfather is watching me right now, and he's super proud of me. And, you know, I will wood glue this table back together as best as I can. And when I look at the scars, when I look at the breaking points, I will look back on it and laugh and say, you know what? We got through it. Honestly, the show really helped because I'm like, good TV, you know? I'm like, you know what? This is really horrible. Run the cameras. Let's just, you know, because it gave me purpose to say, okay, I know I'm not the only person that has this happen, you know, this has happened to. I'm not the only person, and that we're all still here. We're healthy, you know, we're in a beautiful location. Life will go on. I can buy new trinkets. I can buy new things. That's what insurance is for, even though they give you the depreciated value. I won't go into that, but you know, you can replace things, and it's frustrating, and you don't have to deny your feelings of frustration. You don't have to deny that that's pretty horrible. But it was funny at certain times too. And if anyone sees the moving scene, you'll know why it was funny. It's hilarious. I'm sorry. I will say this.
Yeah.
I have a very strong sense of humor, almost to the point of being inappropriate. So I will laugh at anything. And I find a lot of things funny. I think that makes for a good, you know, director, storyteller. I just find the humor in a lot of things. And so, you know, it was funny to me to a certain extent. It was sad, but sometimes you laugh to keep from crying. You know, I think Brittany said Juanita's super flexible. Yeah, you know, I am the person that will take lemons, make a lemonade, then make a lemonade stand, then make a lemonade. Because what else am I going to do?
Start employing a bunch of people to make lemonade.
And then all of a sudden, you know, we've got a franchise of lemonade stores. Sometimes in life, you just have to flex and evolve and move through. That doesn't mean that I won't call my therapist and unpack it all and have the frustration. I think it's very good. It's really, really helpful to be honest about everything that you feel. Be honest about mourning the things that you've lost and not push that down, because that resurfaces as bitterness and frustration and irritation. And anytime that you're not honest about your feelings in a healthy way and getting tools to know how to unpack them in a healthy way. I journal a lot. And yes, when I'm really, really upset. That's how my husband knows to leave me alone, like, oh gosh, she's writing. What have I done? You know, he knows it's really bad if I start scribbling, and I don't type it either. I need the physical, you know, thing of writing it down. I journal a lot to just get the feelings out. What I learned when I was in London the first time around was packing those feelings in and not unpacking them and keeping them to myself and not really saying to somebody, you know, I miss being a lawyer. I miss this aspect. And it's not to say that I am not thoroughly enjoying where I am right now, but that's one thing that a lot of people don't
understand is that, you know, you can be very sad and joyous at the same time. It's not that we're only feeling one thing at a time. And all of those sad or negative feelings that we have, we think, oh, well, we can't let them escape, because if they escape, then what?
Right.
But it's exactly the opposite, because when we push them down and we avoid them and we fight them and resist them, that's when we're feeding the monster in the basement with the fight, the resistance, and the avoidance. And eventually it just seeps out like bad water everywhere and over everything. Michelle Kellogg is my sister. I want to say hi, Shell. Thanks for watching. Yes, I wish I knew this 10 years ago too.
Yes. Yeah. I think, you know, just coping skills for such and unique ones for a unique situation. And it's okay to say, I need guidance on how to cope with this particular type of change. And I think that's why I, you know, did the show also, because I knew that regardless of whether someone was an expat internationally or even domestically, whether they had relocated domestically or whether or not they were just navigating through a change. The show is really about navigating through transitions. You know, it's funny, it's entertaining, you know, and I appreciate people saying that and that I'm funny. I do laugh a lot, but you know, you have to deliver these critical conversations in a way that keeps the audience, in a way that's entertaining, in a way that's authentic. But it's navigating through changes in life. You know, I didn't know when I had my first mammogram that it was going to go that way. I won't give away the show, but who knew? And just because it happened at the time that it happened, life still goes on. That move is still happening, regardless of what, and people, women, men, everybody face health issues all the time, navigating through scary times and periods in your life all the time. So those are the common themes in the show, is really navigating change and finding tribe and settling. And I know one person, I think they wrote in and said, oh, we wish you would have seen more of Taiwan. And, you know, I'm like, we could only do 20 episodes. We made this a 30 episode, you know, we could only do so much. There will be a season 2. I think somebody asked, will there be? Yes, there will be. There will be a season 2. Your streaming helps fund season, because this is an independent project. I mean, I created it, directed, co-directed with Brittany, produced it, funded it individually. And I knew when we were getting ready to go out back into the expat world, I decided to dedicate and save the large majority of my last year, what would have been my salary, my last year, and say, okay, now is the time. I had the idea for the show about 5 years ago, and the timing was just right with this particular move. And so, you know, I knew that if I didn't do it that way, if I gave this to a production company that maybe wasn't familiar with the real expat journey, that it would turn into something else, that maybe it would turn into a travel show. And that's fine and that's great, but that's not really what we wanted to show in terms of helping people to navigate through change and really being truly what possibly is the first show about expat experience and it being authentic and honest. And then, you know, ownership matters and controlling the narrative matters. And luckily now we have streaming platforms that, you know, the world has opened up in terms of your ability to get forward or bring forth stories as a filmmaker. The opportunity to bring forth narratives of underrepresented people. Underrepresented people isn't always race-based either. Expats are underrepresented people. Trailing spouses are underrepresented people, absolutely. And also wellness and mental health is an underrepresented topic. So that's, you know, that's why we did it.
Mm-hmm. You know, some of those squishy emotional things is what so many people just avoid, especially in the media or in corporate America or corporate world. And yet it has such an impact on everything, from, you know, from the productivity of your husband at work to, you know, whether or not this relocation survives, or like Lindy said before, does the marriage survive? Type of a thing. And it's the squishy, it's the emotional, it's the mental health and wellness that actually is the foundation to, you know, super productivity at work, to having a strong, healthy marriage, to bringing a family together, which is one of my favorite benefits of relocation. Is that is why my sister and I are as close as we are, and our folks, is because we relocated together 6 or 7 times, and every time you land, all you have is each other, at least for 2 or 3 months. And it is a special experience that just isn't replicated in any other way that I have found. Now, before I let you go today, I want to talk a little bit about your family, because one of my favorite episodes was when I got to see your grandmother. And then the chat that you had with your mom. And so one of the things that your mom said was, you are who you are, where you are. Wisdom according to mama. Can you talk a little bit about that?
That's probably one of my favorite scenes. My grandmother just turned 91 in July. I am named after my grandmother. So her name is Juanita Tinker. And growing up, it just epitomized everything that was womanhood to me. I think the woman has White Diamond's perfume in her bloodstream. I think it's just in her veins now. It's just how she smells. And she was everything from, fur coats and high heels to it. I just lived for whatever she wore to church. What hat was she going to wear to church that Sunday? I still, we are actually the same person. But it was an honor to have my grandmother and my mom be a part of the show. I wish they could have been there in person. We had plans to film with them that summer. Thanks, COVID, and that didn't happen. But that conversation with my mom, I think it's so critical because she is a woman of a particular generation. I love how she recounted her experiences, her thoughts, her views. And this centers around a question that will bleed into season 2 in terms of pageantry, which we brought up here, and representing, countries and places that you're not from. But just her thought process and her insight. I wasn't expecting that. It wasn't scripted. I didn't know what she was going to say. Brittany was on FaceTime. I had to hire an intern as a production note to have Brittany virtually direct, from afar. And we were silent afterwards. It's a very deep conversation about valuing self, but then at the same time, existing in your own identity in a foreign land, honoring those in the places that you are, but still feeling confident and worthy enough to be your full self exactly where you are. And, no one can give you wisdom like mama can, mom and then grandma and, my grandmother's their great grandmother. Nobody can really make you feel at home, make you feel comfortable, and really help you navigate and give you the wisdom to navigate through issues like your mom and like my grandmother, whom, I don't know if my grandmother has ever left the United States, but yet she's just like this wealth of knowledge and wisdom. And she and I would talk for hours growing up, and that's just who, I have so many sayings from her and so many, and she was one of the individuals when I first moved that told me, baby, don't worry about what anybody else says. Do what's best for you and your family. And always know that you are who you are. And you don't have to shrink. And you don't have to play down. And you don't have to fit in anybody's box. And you don't have to worry about anything. And to give myself permission to just be myself. I remember one time I was talking to her about whether or not I should get a housekeeper. And my grandmother told me she had to have been maybe like 85 at the time. And she said to me, she was like, well, if you want to be as fine as me, because, grandmama looks good. When she starts speaking in third person, that's how you know it's real. And she was like, well, grandmama is fine. So if you want to live to be as fine as me, there's certain labor things that you just don't do. You should outsource that. You should definitely get some help and outsource. It's those wisdom pieces of nuggets. I'm just like, well, grandma, you are really pretty, So maybe I should get a housekeeper. Maybe I shouldn't take this all on myself. But it was a joy having them be a part of the show and share their views. It was an honor. And, I know my grandfather passed away in 2018 before this came to pass, but he was very much involved in us, in our lives when we were in London. And I know he's looking down and I know that he's proud.
Mm-hmm. I think he is. You show honor in everything that you've done that I've seen so far, and I expect that that'll be what I see going forward as well. So, thank you, Juanita. This has been an amazing conversation. Thank you for everybody who has joined us tonight and everybody who listens to this on a replay later on. We are honored to have you here. And Juanita, I'm honored to have you here with me today. Thank you for agreeing to this. I've truly enjoyed your show. Is there anything else that you would like to add before you go?
It's out, it's streaming now. First of all, thank you so much. It's an honor to be here. Thank you for having me. And on this platform, thank you. And, it's out streaming now. I would like to say that Purpose Production is a 501c3 women-owned production company. And so the proceeds from streaming, I don't think this is our 3rd year in existence. I still haven't drawn a salary yet, and it's okay. All of our proceeds go to bringing stories like this, underrepresented narratives. We have a mission of empowering women, and 25% of the streaming proceeds will go to Dress for Success in London and Dress for Success in Chattanooga. So I just wanted people to know that as you stream and are entertained, that you're also empowering women all over the world. So thank you so much for everybody that supports the show, that gets the show. Even if you don't get it, I appreciate you anyway. I appreciate the streams. I appreciate the support. I appreciate all the love that we've seen in doing this. It was our love letter from our family to everybody else. So it's been a journey, and it's been a blessed one. And I hope the show blesses other people.
And it has definitely blessed me. So for those of you out there, the Expats International Ingrams is streaming free for all of those of you who have Prime Video subscriptions. And so if you don't have a Prime Video subscription, you need to go get one so that you can binge watch this, because you know about other binges, and this one is so much better. And you can watch it with all your kids. And so
yes,
I encourage you to do that. Thank you for joining me, Juanita, on the ReloWomen Live Monday night tonight. And we shall come back to y'all again later. See ya.
Bye.
Bye.